I'm here with a really good friend of mine for the last 16, 17 years of our life. His name's Aaron Mello. Over these years, we've been to school together, we've lived together, we've worked together, we've grown beards together.
Some better than others.
But really, what I've witnessed during this time of knowing you is something magical that I really admire about you, is taking the passion that you have and a hobby that you've done your entire life since I've known you. Literally remember our first trip to Arizona and you taking pictures of that lightning storm.
Oh, that's right.
And you've now transformed that love of photography into a business. And I think that is a thing that I think a lot of people try to do, is turn their passions into careers. And you've done that. And, again, I've seen some of your trials and tribulations, and I thought that it would make for a really compelling story. So why don't we go ahead and start out? Why don't you tell me, when did you first get into photography, and really what got you there?
So I think I always pinpoint it on being 14 years old and my dad buying our first digital camera, but it was actually before that. So I think I was probably 12, maybe 13. We went on a family vacation down to visit an aunt of mine in Virginia, and my uncle had a digital camera. It might have been a 2-megapixel camera, and it was enormous. Actually, it was quite large. Not as big as the ones that actually used to record to a floppy, if you remember those.
I do.
And I don't remember what it recorded to, but I just I held that thing the entire time we were there. I was taking macro shots of flowers. We went to Thomas Jefferson's home, Monticello, and it was beautiful. The grounds were beautiful, so I was taking landscapes, I was taking macros, I was taking photos of everybody, and I was just hooked. And then is when I remember my dad buying a digital camera. It was a Canon, which I still have. It actually still works. $500 point and shoot camera. It was about as big as like an ice cream bar. He bought it mostly for himself or for family use, and I just took it over. I mean, I was shooting nighttime stuff, landscapes, long exposures, people, trying to do like makeshift studio stuff in my room with constant lights, and really just trying to take pictures of anything I could. So from there, it was full blown, like, this is what I want to do all the time.
I remember seeing some of your long exposure stuff with like planes and the stars going through the skies.
I just thought that was the coolest thing. Like, you could take a picture for 3 seconds and it would just record everything that happens in the frame. And I used to get giddy because I remember the first time that I recorded water, long exposure, it's how you get that like milky, dreamy effect on the water. And I remember living in Maine, I was 14 or 15 years old at the time, had my tripod in the middle of like a stream or a river, just regular sneakers on, and everything was slippery, and I fell in, my foot was soaked, my pants were soaked, but I did maybe a 5-second exposure.
I hope you saved
water.
the camera.
Oh, the camera was fine. I mean, I was fine too, but I was a little more beat up. But I remember seeing it, and I was by myself in the woods and like cheering like you'd see on TV. I was, yeah, because I just thought it was the coolest picture I'd ever taken in my entire life. And I was like, this is what happens. This is how people do it. So little moments like that just vividly make me remember kind of where I started, I guess, if you will.
Is there any one photo in that period of time that specifically, I mean, obviously you just kind of told us that story about that long exposure to the stream, but is there any other like photo that really like sticks out as like the flagship Aaron Mello photo that you rest your hat on?
I think my knee-jerk answer to that is probably my photo that went most viral at the time, because there wasn't a Flickr, there wasn't Instagram, there was no good sharing websites. DeviantArt, where you can put photos, you can put drawings, artwork, graphic design. So I don't remember. At the time, I might have had a couple hundred followers, but I photoshopped an image, which you can do in camera now, a multi-exposure. So I was trying a lot of self-portraiture, and it was, at a time when I was 14 or 15 years old, and I was all in my feelings. So things were kind of sketchy, or not sketchy, but rocky in my 14-year-old life. So
raw photos.
Yeah. So I just tried to convey emotion. So I think in my bedroom, I set my camera up and I took 3 photos specifically. One was me in one part of my room kind of doing this, looking all sad. The other part might have been on my bed, I can find it, but it was essentially a picture of me, but there were 3 of me in the room. And at that time, nobody was really doing stuff like that. People weren't photoshopping stuff like that. And it just took off. I mean, tens of thousands of views at that time was huge.
Wow.
Hundreds and hundreds of comments being like, this is an amazing photo. And I was like, wow, there's something to this. Something that I'm doing is resonating with people. And I took maybe a half hour to make it because I put the 3 together in Photoshop, erase out me here and erase out me there. And next thing I know, it just goes viral. So I think that is another stepping stone where I was just like, wow, this could really turn into something, but I don't know what.
Yeah.
I can gain popularity on the internet, but what does that mean? So being 15, 14, I was like, okay, cool. I had a really cool photo on the internet that a lot of people liked. So I think to answer your question, that's probably the one.
Yeah, that's awesome. I appreciate you sharing that with us. So, I mean, I think to kind of piggyback off that, you know, as I mentioned, we've worked together. So I know you've been in sales for a long time. I know that you have a very similar background, right? You sold cell phones. We've worked in software sales together. You know, we've gone through that ringer. So, you know, obviously having your own business, you need to have some of those soft people skills, which I think, you know, you've developed that way. But when did you actually realize that this hobby could be taken up a level and actually become something that sustains your life? I mean, we're old, so right, like you have a kid that you have to pay for, right? And,
Yeah.
and like taking that jump from like working that 9 to 5 to like having your own business. How did you make that transition?
I think if I start as far back as I can when I think that it can become a career and make money, it's probably when I was in sales working for BMW. I loved it when I first started, but then I grew to hate it because I'm at a dealership for 60 hours a week. And what I actually found myself doing more than not was browsing other photographers' galleries, their portfolios, people that are shooting commercial work and bands and meeting famous people. And I'm sitting here at work just scrolling and drooling and saying, man, I wish this could happen to me. But my mindset then when I think that I was 24 was something's just going to fall in my lap. Somebody's going to see one photo of mine and go, we need to hire this kid. Some marketing agency that needed a photographer or some band was just going to see something of mine and go, we need him. And so days would go by and I would say, nothing today, you know, nothing's falling in my lap, but I wasn't being proactive in attaining what I wanted. So here I am working 60 hours a week, just dying at a desk going, oh, I just want to shoot photos for a living. But like you said, having a child, being a single dad, I couldn't be selfish and just go, I'm going to quit this job and just do what I want to do. That never happened. As badly as I dreamed about that happening, I would buy some gear. I would get stuff from my home studio. I would shoot people's headshots, mostly friends, but every now and again something would come along where somebody'd say, hey, I'll give you $100. Cool. Anything is better than nothing.
I know you've shot some of my most intimate moments with
Yeah.
my newborn shots and
Yeah.
our announcement for our second child. And so, yeah, I mean, I know you've definitely done that for me. So
Yeah.
here are some photos
I was going to say, do you want to put one up here, put one up there?
we can flash through.
Yeah. But I mean, if we, and nothing ever happened. So if we fast forward to probably when I transitioned to where I am now, if we go back to middle of 2018, I was working a sales job that, again, it paid the bills. I actually didn't hate it. I liked commuting to Boston. I liked working in Boston. It just made me, I guess, feel a little more important because I was commuting to Boston and, you know,
big city.
the big city. Yeah, still kind of being drawn in by the flashing lights. So I was in a sales job, and long story short, I was let go in June of 2018. And I think that was, I'd had little moments like that before where I would lose a job or I would quit a job and go, all right, now I need to go full force into photography. But there wasn't enough oomph in myself, I guess, to really know where to start. And people like to offer the advice of like, you just got to shoot. It's like, yeah, but it's kind of harder than that. You can't just bug all your friends for shoots and expect that to snowball into
Right.
paid shoots and this and that, because it's not an overnight thing. It's not a, maybe in a month or two. It's just like, here I am a year and a half later, still trying to figure it out. But so I got let go from the job and I said, you know what? I have a couple months kind of buffer right now with it in regards to money in my bank account. I can just kind of figure things out. I don't want to get back into the sales world. This is kind of my last shot to do what I want. So I made it through to the winter, and then really after paying, life and bills and for my son, I was like, oh shoot, I don't have any more money. So, I started putting my resume out there. I went to interview after interview after interview for sales jobs again in Boston, but nothing was coming through. I mean, you know that, we talk about it every time. So I probably went to 4, 5, 6 in-person interviews, had another handful of over the phone or Skype or whatever interviews, and just nothing was coming through. And I start to evaluate myself to say, well, what am I doing wrong? I feel like we're having good conversations, but nobody's hiring me. Nobody's giving me an offer. So what am I doing wrong? So it took a lot of introspection. And at the same time, I was like, but why? What am I going to do? I'm going to get back into a job that I hate. Yeah, it'll pay the bills. But there was always that Libra scale of paying my bills, but being miserable at the same time, which has kind of always been my problem. So I think at that point I decided, you know what? You kind of have to suffer a little bit. You kind of have to make sure that you can get by the skin of your teeth, but be happy in what you're doing. I wanted to photograph, and that's all I wanted to do. So I will do what it takes, and I will suffer in the meantime, whether that's my mental health or not being able to pay bills, but I'm still trying to get to where I need to be. So, does that answer that part?
Yeah,
I feel like I could just keep going.
Well, no, and it's great because I mean, to look at the following that you've grown. I mean, you're a little bit niched, right? So like you're not a little bit. You're doing a lot of portrait work, right? You're doing wedding photography, portrait work, and stuff like that. Now, I guess like as a photographer, how important is it for you to find a specific area that you can excel at? Because I mean, you mentioned earlier while you were younger, you're doing landscapes and portraits and all of this stuff. So in today's day and age, like we mentioned, again, we're old. So when we were younger, you could shoot all these things and put them somewhere. But now I feel like in the Instagram era and everything like that, like people want you to have like a specific function.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
How important is it to you to have fallen into the niche that you've fallen into in the portraits and stuff like that? And does that end up shoehorning you into one particular thing? Do you still feel like you can express your creative freedom, or do you feel that like you're in this box that you're now chasing after a very specific thing?
So I think financially I've put myself into this box because I've never been able to put myself into one defined niche where I'm a portrait photographer and that's it.
Right.
Because years ago people would say, why don't you get into weddings? And I said, no, I want nothing to do with weddings. I don't want to shoot weddings. I don't want to deal with the stress of weddings. Like, yeah, it's lucrative, but so are a lot of other things that I wouldn't be passionate about. So just by happenstance, it was like, I met my girlfriend and she was a wedding photographer, and it kind of steamrolled from there. That really got me into the wedding industry. Otherwise, I really don't know what I would be shooting. I'd probably still be chasing people for headshots or family photos or whatnot, but those are things that I do to supplement kind of the main part. So if I say that 75 to 85% of my business is wedding photography, then the other part of my business is where I can creatively excel. So working for coffee shops and breweries and small businesses in areas that I like, because I spent time professionally in the brewing industry as a sales guy or a brand guy or doing tastings and all those fun things that come along with it. So I can kind of get my creative outlets in that capacity. If I make money from it, even better, but I can still express myself in that way.
What's fun is that I remember, a couple years back when you were trying to do this, as you mentioned, that you've had a few false starts, I would call it. I wouldn't even call them for a start. You're still building a portfolio, right? But
very slowly.
And I remember that you were trying to build this clientele list of, product photography. You were doing product shoots for the juice company, and you were trying to even just give free work to people for their products, and you couldn't even give it away. And I know recently you've just landed a contract with a coffee roaster. And how must that feel for you?
It's really nice because, like you said, there was a lot of times I could not give stuff away. I would go out on a messaging spree on Instagram or even emails, because I feel like a lot of business owners, knowing what you and I know from the restaurant industry, prefer emails.
Yep.
They don't want to be called half of the time. They don't run their socials if they even have one. So I would go on sprees where I would send out, 10, 15, 20 emails a day, which doesn't sound like a lot in the grand scheme of things, but I would get people, no thanks, not interested, not for us, not the time, or just get no response at all. So I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Again, it's kind of the introspection thing where it's like, I can't even give it away. People are paying hundreds or tens of thousands of dollars for nice marketing shots or their marketing campaigns, and I just can't even give it away. So I don't know if I wasn't hitting the right decision makers, the people that really cared about it, or what, but I mean, it was kind of stacking up against me where something had to fall through. So to answer your question about recently landing a contract with a coffee roaster, I mean, it's great because, again, like I said, I get my creative expression through that because I love coffee. It's my morning routine, and not just like, instant coffee. It's like the weighing the beans, grinding the beans, all that. But so it's nice. It's really nice. Somebody that believes in my artistic ability to do that. They are willing to pay me. They are looking to pay me for an extended period of time because we did sign the contract that, hey, I'm going to be there for a little while, not just a one and done. And I think that's important.
And I also think it's worth noting that this coffee roaster that you're now doing photography work for, you actually interviewed for a job while you were going through that interview spree that nothing panned out for.
Yeah.
And I think, again, from a personal triumph perspective, and the reason why I'm interested in your story is that, I think that moment in time really encapsulates this triumph of you excelling in this role and taking a hobby and turning it into a career. Is literally you applied to a job to roast coffee at this company, and they said thanks but no thanks, and now you're there shooting photography for them and capturing those special moments that they want to relay to their Instagram following or their customers or whatever it might be. And I think that was a magical transformation that I got to witness. So
yeah, that was fun. That was interesting.
So what do you think the most difficult thing is now being your own boss, right? So you've shed the corporate 9-to-5 life, which I'm jealous about. Honestly, working 9 to 5 it's hard. It's a slog.
Yeah.
But now that you're doing this full time, what is that challenge of being your own boss?
Being disciplined, and it's being disciplined with your time in the off times, but it's being disciplined with your time when you're busy, when you're go. Like October of last year being my busiest month I've ever had, where it's weddings, it's the videos, it's the photos. So
how long does it take? Just to give people an idea of scale, right? So for a wedding, what's the typical length of video that you would provide?
I would say my average wedding video from last year was probably about 7 minutes long.
How much video do you have to cut through? How much video do you record during that period?
I tend to overshoot, so I have a lot of clips. I could have probably somewhere upwards of 1,000 clips. So, you'll go from 1,000 raw clips that are not color graded. They're not corrected in exposure or contrast, anything like that. So that's a whole separate entity. So if I take 1,000 clips and then maybe cull them down to 500 that I'm going to use, put them into a timeline to see kind of where we're at for time. And, your film might be 15 minutes long, but you're not going to have start to end on each. So once I can kind of compress that down, I'm sorry, did you ask how long it would take me?
No, I'm just trying to get the scale right. So you have a 7-minute deliverable.
Deliverable, yeah.
Out of that 7-minute deliverable, you have about, you said, 1,000,
possibly 1,000
you're stringing
clips.
together.
Yeah.
How many minutes or hours is that you're cutting down to?
Well, I don't want to make anybody upset if they hear this, because they'll be like, well, there's so much footage that I haven't seen of my wedding. But I mean, there could be 45 minutes of a wedding. There could be an hour, but it depends, for the simple fact on A, what we talked about that you wanted, and B, what I think, in my professional opinion, is the best to show off your day. Because there might be a clip that the bridesmaid is picking her nose, or something like that, where it's like, well, I can't use it. You looked beautiful in it, but your bridesmaid was in the back, But so there's little instances like that where you can just delete stuff right from the get-go. So you could have maybe an hour of raw footage that you are just constantly clipping down until you get to that perfect length.
And how do you build that trust? I'm sure, right, with a client, they're going to trust you for their big day to capture that magical moment and to make sure that they can replay that for their friends, their family, their kids over and over again. What do you do to really build that trust to allow them to understand that you get the vision and that they're going to trust your vision and that you guys are going to deliver something that you're both proud of?
It's always important for me because I think my sales experience started out face-to-face. So it was a handshake and a smile. It was the cell phone sales.
Again, we're old.
Selling cell phones in the mall.
Selling cell phones that would go beep beep. Like,
boop, boop, where you at?
Yeah.
So I think that has always stuck with me in regards to starting a relationship, because you can convey emotion through your body language, through your tone of voice, your firm handshake, and whatever else it may be. So a lot of my clients actually, we did not meet that way now. So I think there's a little bit lost when it comes to that. So anybody that I do meet face to face, it's very important to me. It's important to me to say, hey, let's meet over a coffee and we'll talk about your wedding, rather than answer these questions via email so you don't know my tone or your tone or really what's important to you or your personality. So honestly, I think it was either my first or second wedding video of last year where I did actually meet with them in person, and they're a younger, more vibrant couple. They're super excited. They're so in love. They want an upbeat video. So it was important for me to kind of realize their personalities. They realize mine, what I want to convey for them. So building trust, I think, face-to-face is so important rather than phone call, anything. It's just the most superior.
Yeah.
So it's making sure that we're on the same page and we're super transparent the entire time.
Yeah. But I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do this. And
yeah, I've never been interviewed before like this.
I've never
not felt like I was being interrogated.
I've never done an interview like this, so I'm glad
it was good.
First.
It was good. It was easy.
Yeah, it was good for me.
Good for everybody
I hope
involved.
it was good for you.
Hope it wasn't too painful to watch.
Let us know what you think down in the comments below, and appreciate you guys taking the time to watch. Thank you.
Nailed it.
Killed it.